Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the guests who have joined us here today. I'm Luke Downs, UK and Ireland Marketing Manager here at Similarweb and the host of this webinar. We'll shortly be diving into the topic of mocktails to go, exploring the latest beverage trends in the US and UK market. But before we get there, I'm delighted to welcome David Bushron, digital consultant here at Similarweb. David helps global brands in the CPG and retail space to optimize their digital performance and grow their market share through the use of Similarweb's world-class data. Today's presentation will be followed by a Q&A, so please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation using the chat feature below the viewing pane. I will pose these questions at the end of the webinar, but until then, I'd like to hand you over to David.
Super, thank you very much, Luke. Hello and welcome, everybody. As Luke said, my name is David, and I'll be here to talk you through some of the trends in the US and UK markets over the next 20 to 25 minutes, after which we'll have some time for any questions you may have. A quick agenda of the topics we're going to cover today. So I'm going to start with a macro level overview of the beverage industry to understand what are the big trends that are affecting the market. Then we're going to go deeper into the no and low alcohol market to understand why consumers are gravitating towards zero or low alcoholic beverages now more than ever before, and what their consumer journey looks like. We've got a couple of case studies following this, one looking at the direct-to-consumer market in the US, followed by a deep dive on Amazon in the UK, and then we'll wrap up with a few key takeaways from today's webinar before your questions. So, today, the global beverage industry is worth an estimated 1.8 trillion US dollars and has proven to be one of the most crisis-proof consumer goods categories, with government schemes and grants keeping spending buoyant. With online sales making up approximately 15% of the market, e-commerce has become a sophisticated marketplace and an increasingly crucial part of the consumer journey, both for research and conversion. But as the online marketplace becomes ever more complex, the digital landscape will change, and here are the key trends we believe will shape the beverage industry in years to come. Premiumization is changing the way we drink as consumers, are beginning to opt for quality over quantity. And we see evidence of this as retailers stock smaller yet high quality options, as well as like extravagantly coloured liquors, glitter-filled gins that give the appearance of high-end products primed for consumers to post on places like social media. With mocktails, the no and low alcohol products are becoming increasingly normalized lifestyle choices as consumers prioritize not just health, wellness, and their nutrition, but also tighten their wallets. Products that offer an experience equivalent to their alcoholic counterparts resonate best with these consumers and allow these products to share a space at retailers alongside things like soft drinks. As the e-commerce marketplace continues to grow, brands are increasingly focused on driving traffic to their direct-to-consumer sites over e-retailers. With the hope of brand loyalty and the ability to control multiple touchpoints with consumers, D2C websites are increasingly the preferred choice with brands. Worldwide traffic to beverage websites has grown by 5% from 2021 to 2022. And by looking at Similarweb data, we can identify the countries that have the most traffic to beverage websites, USA, Japan, UK, as well as which countries are growing the fastest. Again, USA, but interestingly, Brazil here. And this helps brands target the right consumers in the right markets. In addition, on the right-hand side, we can see the top visited beverage websites globally. Interestingly, we have a mixture of both retail sites like Total Wine and Vivino, brand pages such as Suntory, and content websites liquor.com and Wine Searcher. But the key insight to highlight here is the prevalence of alcohol-related websites. Compared to soft drinks, Coca-Cola comes in at number 10, Pepsi number 11. And this shows that alcohol is the key driver in the beverage industry. If we focus on just the US and the UK countries, we get a slightly different picture of how the market stacks up. The UK market is more D2C focused than the US, with coffee sites such as Costa and Starbucks appearing in the top 5 with their online ordering functionality. We also have Brewdog, Beer 52, Beerhawk appearing in the top 10, highlighting the British propensity for a nice cold beer. This contrasts highly with the US market, where we see a range of e-retailers such as Total Wine, Vivino, and Drizzly, alongside a range of content sites, liquor.com, Untapped, VinePair, and Beer Advocate, which suggests that consumers in the US have less brand loyalty when it comes to beverages and alcohol in particular. We've talked about the beverage industry as a whole, but now going to focus on the no low alcohol market. As I mentioned before, the no and low alcohol products are becoming increasingly normalized lifestyle choices, making this category more accessible and inviting for consumers. Dry January is behind us, and yet the average consumer of 2023 is gravitating towards zero or low alcoholic beverages now more than ever before. And we can see from these headlines that this is a global phenomenon. Europe will account for 37%, more than 37% of the no low alcohol market growth. The UK's fastest growing beer category is now no and low alcohol, with new brands such as Impossibrew coming into the market, or traditional brands like Guinness and Heineken launching their 0.0 offerings. We even saw in February, Heineken ran the first ever non-alcoholic beer commercial during the Super Bowl, with a little help from Ant-Man to promote their Heineken 0.0. A significant portion of the no and low alcohol market is driven by Gen Z and millennials. These are the consumers more likely to substitute no and low for full strength products, or even sometimes blend between the two offerings based on wellness and rising costs. IWSR states that the global no and low alcohol market is currently worth 11 billion US dollars, and they're predicting that the market will accelerate growth by 7% per year to 2026. This is compared to the regular alcohol market, which is only estimated to grow at 5% per year. So we know that the no and low alcohol market is growing in popularity, but I'd like to focus now on what the consumer journey looks like, from awareness through to conversion, starting with consumers, or what consumers are searching for in the no and low alcohol space. Worldwide, there are more than 1 million no and low alcohol searches per month, with the most popular search terms on the left being things like mocktail or mocktails, non-alcoholic beer and wine, and Heineken 0.0. This is the only branded term to show up in the top 5. In fact, Heineken 0.0 saw a 300% increase in searches in February, with Heineken 0.0 also seeing a boost in traffic. All of this was off the back of the Super Bowl ad that I mentioned earlier, highlighting the impact these promotional ads can have in the US market, where brand affinity and brand loyalty isn't that high. We can also see that alcohol-free cocktails and how to make mocktails have also seen a boost in traffic this year, as more and more consumers plan to drink at home. When we look at consumer searches in the UK and US, we can see that the US has a more fragmented brand share than the UK, suggesting that the US is a slightly more mature market. In fact, although the top searches are for non-alcoholic beer and wine, when it comes to no and low alcohol liquors, we see branded searches for Kineuphorics, beer, and Seedlip, demonstrating brand awareness and high purchase intent. We can also see Heineken 0.0 popping up again. When it comes to the UK market though, only one of the top searches is branded. We see Seedlip here at number 3, with the rest of the top 10 search terms being more generic. Things like non-alcoholic wine, beer, gin, etc. This suggests that British consumers are not fully aware of the brands and the products that they can purchase in this space. And this presents a prime opportunity in the UK for brands to capitalize on, whether that's through awareness advertising campaigns like Heineken did for the Super Bowl, or for targeted content. And I'll show you a little bit more about that later. Going further into the consumer journey, we can identify both the top transactional and content sites, the winning traffic from no and low alcohol searches. Now, it's important to split these websites apart because they tell us different stories. Transactional sites are where consumers are going to make a purchase, whereas content sites are helping consumers do their research and build awareness of brands and products. Sort of like getting a recommendation from a friend about what drink you might like. Perhaps unsurprisingly, Tesco tops the transactional sites list in the UK, with Sainsbury's and Amazon also appearing. But Three Spirit Drinks and Seedlip both show up with their direct-to-consumer offerings. Now, this is really obvious and noticeable in the US, where Seedlip, King Euphorics, and Curious Elixirs are the top 3 transactional sites, reinforcing what we've seen previously, where the US market has much higher brand awareness and affinity. For the content sites, we see a dominance of lifestyle websites, but also a couple of news pages are showing up. But this tends to be the lifestyle section of the websites, where they're posting about how you can feel better when you're making a purchase on these no and low alcohol products. Focusing a little bit more on the content sites, there tends to be 2 different types of content that resonate best with consumers. These are the best listicles and recipe recommendations. The best listicles present complicated information in a format that's easy for the brain to digest. And who here doesn't like an easy to read list? Typically, these lists are quick to read, contain images of the drinks so we can recognize them quickly in a bar or when we're in a shop. They've got links to where you can buy them, along with prices so you can compare different products against each other. Short descriptions of the products, including what makes each product unique, and they always come with attention-grabbing headline. Some of these examples are on the screen here. These listicles should be a vital part of your marketing strategy if you're trying to build brand awareness for your product in this market. As we saw with the keywords earlier, how to make mocktails and mocktail recipes are some of the top search terms when it comes to the no and low alcohol market. Mocktails at home are a relatively new phenomenon, and with the rise of people drinking at home, this is a great set of content for consumers to browse to make sure they not only make the best mocktails possible, but also make them seem as premium as possible, threading back to one of our trends being premiumization, and making them seem as premium as possible when their friends and family come around so they can post them on social media, make it look as great as they can. It also helps your brand awareness if these recipes recommend to use your specific brand in their recipe, because who here doesn't follow a recipe to the letter? In fact, we can see how consumers are relying on content reviews before buying a no low alcohol brands. In this example, we can see the top websites winning organic search traffic in the US from Kineuphoric's keywords over the last 14 months. We can see that in April, May, June 2022, there was a boom in traffic to content sites, highlighting the hot content and product reviews. And what followed next? We can see an increase in traffic to the Kineuphoric sites following the increased interest in content and reviews, as the brand stands out in a crowded market and consumers now have a desire to purchase it. This is especially notable since the increased content-driven traffic is going to articles with varying publishing dates, all the way back to 2019. This shows an organic need for consumers to check out content reviews to help them decide on whether or not to buy into the brand. And this is proof that if you're building your brand now, content publishing sites will give you that visibility to your target market. This flows nicely into my next slide, which highlights the rise of direct-to-consumer sites in the US. Just like we've seen previously with Kineuphorics, high brand awareness and purchase intent in the US is helping other brands such as Seedlip and Curious Elixirs win traffic from big e-com platforms such as Amazon. So how are they doing this? Looking back historically, we can see in the green bar on the left how dominant Amazon was in the market. A hangover from lockdowns where there was a boom in online deliveries as retail stores shut down. But over time, Seedlip and Curious Elixirs optimized search traffic for their own branded terms, whereas Amazon focused on generic non-alcoholic drinks terms. This, coupled with the growing branded searches for both Seedlip and Curious Elixirs, meant that in Q4 last year, they were capturing more than 97% of branded search terms versus Amazon, despite it being peak shopping season on Amazon's website. This highlights both the growing importance of establishing brand identity in the US market, but also how consumers are far more willing to switch to a D2C offering if they know the brand and the product that they're looking for. So we've looked at the consumer journey in general, followed by the rise of D2C in the US for brands such as Kineuphorics, Seedlip, Curious Elixirs. But what about the UK, where we said previously the market is a bit fresher and is more focused on different e-retailers such as Tesco's, Sainsbury's and Amazon? Well, using Similarweb's shopper intelligence platform, we can deep dive into Amazon performance for specific categories, brands and products. If we compare 2021 performance versus 2022, we can see that although Amazon UK drink sales dropped by 24%, and this trend is matched in the beer, wine and spirits category, the no and low alcohol category has grown by 10% year on year. Also, if we bear in mind that Amazon performance spiked in 2021 as online deliveries increased when retail stores were closed, the no and low alcohol market on Amazon UK has more than doubled since 2020 as consumers switch their drinking preferences and more options and products become available to them. This makes Amazon a really hard to ignore marketplace in the UK if you're looking to promote and sell your no and low alcohol products. Looking deeper into the data, we can see that Impossible Brew is the up and coming no and low alcohol brand on Amazon. Now, Impossible Brew was launched in 2021, and it was after being rejected by the investors on Dragon's Den. Impossible Brew has grown rapidly on Amazon UK, especially around the Christmas period last year, coming in at number 3 on the top selling brands in the no and low alcohol category. As we've come to expect with the British, beer and cider brands are the main players in the market. We can see Bavaria, Kopparberg, even Beck's appearing in the top 5. And our penchant for gin is still driving traffic to Gordon 0.0. But interestingly, when we dig deeper and look at the top selling products in this category, we can see a preference for consumers to buy in bulk, either 12 or 24 can cases, as consumers are looking for economies of scale. This all highlights a current opportunity in the UK for brands to capitalize on. The no and low alcohol category on Amazon is a growing market with no one brand dominating. So optimizing this particular channel can really set you on the path to growth. So I just wanted to summarize the key points from the session today before we move on to our Q&A. So firstly, the no and low alcohol market is predicted to grow rapidly as consumers make a conscious switch to no and low alcohol products to prioritize not just health, wellness and nutrition, but also tighten their wallets. Secondly, D2C websites are winning in the US by building relationships with content publishing sites such as wellness and lifestyle magazines. These sites help consumers do their research and build awareness of brands and products through top 10 best listicles and recipes recommendations. And this then helps brands drive traffic to their D2C sites over big e-com platforms such as Amazon once they've built up that brand recognition and affinity with consumers. Finally, in the UK, the no and low alcohol category on Amazon is growing rapidly, fast outpacing other drinks categories on the site. And as we've seen with Impossible Brew, this gives the perfect opportunity for new brands and disruptors to enter the market and dominate. That's everything that we're going to cover today. So please let us know in the Q&A any questions that you've got. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, David. We have, as David mentioned, if you have questions, please get them in the Q&A box now. I know the chat's disabled, but the Q&A box is there for you to pose your questions. We've had 3 questions come through, David, and the first one, which I'd like to pose, is which alcohol types are garnering the most affinity with customers? I assume this relates to the consumption of low to no alcohol gin against lager alternatives, for example.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. I think that this completely depends on the market. We can see in the data that we look at, there's a completely different demand depending on the consumers. So, for example, in the US, there was a much higher demand for things like beer, even some wines, whereas in the UK, we see a lot of demand for beer, but primarily spirits as well. Gin tends to come up a lot when we're looking at the no and low alcohol space in the UK.
Great, thank you. And which up-and-coming brands and retailers should the guys be looking for out there?
I think we've highlighted a few of the brands that are up and coming, that are really dominating the space at the moment. In terms of retailers, I think it depends on the market. The US is definitely prime for D2C. It gives brands more control over that whole relationship with consumers. In the UK, definitely Amazon is the retail space to look at. But I also think it's very important for brands to have a multi-channel strategy when it comes to the no and low alcohol space, and also when it comes to launching into the market.
Great, thanks, David. And you mentioned that brands are prioritizing e-commerce and D2C strategies, but are consumers also preferring this way of purchasing or engaging with a brand? The follow-up point to that is, are consumers more willing to purchase from D2C brands or owned e-com platforms rather than e-retail sites?
That's a great question. I think it's definitely a mixture. So consumers are definitely willing to buy from these D2C brands, but to get there, they need to know and recognize and have a link to that brand. So if you come into the market now, unless a consumer knows who you are, they're more likely to focus on the brands they know. Or if they're a new purchaser of no and low alcohol, they're going to go to the e-retail sites, because that's where they can discover more about the different options that they have. So it depends on the brand and how it's promoted.
Thanks, David. And I think we've got time to squeeze one more question in. The question is, do we know what is driving the growth in no and low on UK Amazon? Is it the new brands coming in? And which subcategory is driving this? Is it beer, wines, or spirits?
Again, a very good question. So what is driving the growth in no and low on Amazon? We are definitely seeing a switch in consumer interests. So as I said before, the no and low alcohol industry is growing rapidly, and this is driven by some of the millennials and Gen Z. That's the typical consumer that is switching their product choice. So they're the people that are driving this growth on Amazon, as they're the ones that are more likely to be purchasing online. We are seeing a lot of new brands coming in. Impossible Brew was one that came in last year, and that's really ballooned and taken off towards the end of last year, especially around the Christmas time. So we're definitely seeing in the UK a lot of these new beer brands that are promoting there.
Great, thanks, David. The questions are coming thick and fast. What is the key points that consumers looking for on 0% alcohol drinks? Do you think it's more related on an emotional level or an emotional trigger, or more on a rational trigger on RTB?
I think I think this is definitely a mixture. So what we're seeing is that a lot of consumers are typically purchasing these drinks based on the content that they're reading. We see things like Kin Euphorics, which had a great marketing campaign. It's backed by celebrities, and people are buying into that as a whole promise. We're also seeing at the moment, a lot of different differentials in the market as well. So we see some products that are adding some herbs and things like this to make them stand out. So that's definitely something that is changing the consumer preference. But I think the key thing for consumers is that they're looking for products that they can buy into, that they can aspire to. And that kind of goes hand in hand with some of the premiumization trends that we're seeing in the alcohol market as well.
Perfect. Thank you, David. We're at the end for questions. So you can take a breather. I'd like to extend a huge thank you to David, obviously, for taking your time out this afternoon, and to the audience who have joined us today, and hope you found the session valuable and relevant. We'll follow up with you in the next few days to ensure questions you have about Similarweb are answered, and that you receive a copy of the slide deck too. A recording of the webinar will also be sent to you via email, and will be made available on demand on our YouTube channel. So if you happen to miss anything, of course, please feel free to rewatch it and share it with your peers. Thanks again to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.